All right, so for the weekly review question number 6, the second question on this problem, it was asked to draw a picture of the blot. So what would first happen before you made the blot is you would have a gel, and right here would be you'd have a ladder, and then in the second column you'd have like the overexpression vector for P53 in the 293 cells. So we can just call this the overexpression vector cells, and then the non-overexpression vector cells. So you basically have, different patterns. It could, again, this is just making one up. And then maybe for the cells that weren't treated with the overexpression vector, you would get that. And to run a blot, this would be transferred over to a filter paper. So the actual blot would look like this. You'd have, in this case, if you want to do it, you would have the ladder, which is this first one. And then you'd have the cells that were treated with the overexpression vector for P53. And then the cells that weren't treated with the overexpression vector. So usually these letters would be up top, but there's just that writing right there. So you'd have the ladder, then the overexpression vector, and then the non-overexpression vector. And now if we wanted to draw what it would look like if the primary antibodies were to bind to P53 in this filter paper, let's just take this little band and say like this was P53's molecular weight and we had a band here. Ideally what would happen, I'll just erase some of these so we can actually see the drawing. We'd have the primary antibody, which binds to the P53 protein, so it would bind right there in the blot, and then we'd have the secondary antibody. And again, this is just a made up, like we're just imagining that this area is where P53 runs on the gel because, we know the molecular weight of P53 and it's around whatever this is. But really what we're trying to image here is just seeing how the primary antibody binds to the P53 protein, and the secondary antibody will bind to the primary antibody. And for the last part, if we want to just actually run a blot or a Western blot and get the results for this data set, we could check for, P53 protein, and then we'd have the two groups of cells, the overexpression vector cells and the non-overexpression vector cells. After doing this, you would expect to see probably a darker band for the P53 protein in comparison to the non-overexpression vector cells. And that's, as we know, is because there's going to be more P53 expressed in the overexpression vector cells, therefore having a darker band. But you do the same process, so technically it would look like this, because the antibody would also bind to the P53 and the non-overexpression vector cells. So that's how it would look.